folks down here who want to talk to us, right? Go for it.
Yeah, well, I'll real quick. So tonight we want to receive an update on the Tremont barrel fill. Obviously, this is a very critical and important issue to not only Springfield, but Clark County and greater Southwest Ohio. And so tonight we've asked if Health Commissioner Charlie Patterson and Representative from People for Safe Water, Marilyn Welker, would be able to give us an update of kind of where we're at, where we stand, and I know the commissioners have comments and feedback as well. So with that, Charlie.
Well, thank you, Mr. City Manager and Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. The update basically is we don't have an update. You and I met virtually with the EPA site coordinator several months ago. We were promised a monthly update from them. That has not really happened. But in the meantime, the negotiations have not been fruitful. We were actually told, give us to the end of the year. We think we can have something. We ought to have something about a community meeting or something posted by the end of the year. And obviously that hasn't happened because the negotiations have not moved forward the way the U.S. EPA Region 5 would have hoped they would have. And I know that Marilyn and her team have talked with the site coordinator. And so I'll pause for a moment and have you bring us up to speed.
Jenny Polster is our project manager at US EPA in Chicago. Jenny has been, I will remind her that she's not doing what she had said she would do for your benefit, but she is very accessible to our group, and she has told us negotiations continue. She said, we are expending an inordinate number of resources and time on this. Leela Jones is our negotiator in US DOJ, Department of Justice. She said Leela is the best. She's hard and she's clear, and yet nothing is happening. Now, as Mr. Patterson said, this is a negotiation that should have taken about a year, and the fact that, what Jenny says is the negotiations are continuing, but she says they are going very slowly. And she said any noise we can make, any actions that we can do on our end to try to increase the pressure, we know that the problem is not US DOJ and US EPA. We know the problem is somewhere in this pool of corporations who are responsible for the cleanup.
I ask you some questions. Some of it will sound very familiar to you because you've been involved in the communications, but we have a number of people from many different organizations within the city, some representatives from German Township here tonight, other organizations, and I think it's important they understand what's been said and how really critical this problem is for our community as well as the rest of Clark County. When we talked to the Ohio EPA the other day, it was Brian, myself, and Commissioner Patterson. What was interesting is they said, we agree that everybody has agreed on the problem. And the problem is approximately 3 million gallons of toxic waste in the Tremont barrel fill. Am I correct?
Industrial and toxic, yes.
1.5 million gallons of hazardous waste in that 3 million gallons of industrial and toxic.
So this is not the stuff that we put in our garbage every week that's picked up. This is some pretty heavy-duty industrial type toxic waste. That is a real threat to our water supply if it gets in there. Okay, so we've all agreed on the problem. What was interesting in that conversation with Ohio EPA the other day was that they said, we've also all agreed on a solution. Is that correct?
Yes.
So everybody, including the corporations involved, have agreed upon a solution, and it is a solution that was presented not by the city, not by you or Charlie or anybody else, but by Waste Management. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this solution that everybody has agreed to, and I will admit from our perspective, reluctantly,
Yes.
because it wasn't all that we hoped it would be, but half a loaf was better than none. So this solution has been agreed to by everyone, and the solution that has been agreed to is the one presented by Waste Management.
Yes.
So far we're doing well. So what's the problem? Where's the hang up getting this consent decree done? Do we know who's holding it up?
US EPA and the US Department of Justice have a requirement that they are not able to tell us what is the status of the negotiations specifically. It's called enforcement confidentiality. And that just means that anytime we talk to Jenny, she says, I so wish I could tell you, I cannot tell you. She said, however, if you know anybody who is in these corporations, you can talk to them and they can tell you. So that's where we are.
So I want to make sure I understand it. EPA, US EPA, who's acting on our behalfs, all of us who are concerned about this, can't talk to us. And the Justice Department, which is the legal arm of the United States government, can't talk to us.
Not with specific corporate names.
But the corporations know who's involved.
Who they are, yes.
So in this particular case, the defendants, the corporations, know more than we do, the plaintiffs.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to track all of this out there. Can we talk to the corporations?
Yes. If we know who they are.
Well, I just happened, with the help of our law director, Jill Allen, come across a case that was filed February 3rd, 2011. And this is a case with the plaintiffs being the Responsible Environmental Solutions Alliance, and the defendant is Waste Management, Inc., et al. And it was heard by Judge Walter Rice. And among the plaintiffs, now these are companies who are suing Waste Management, are the following: Delphi, the Procter & Gamble Company, PPG Industries, International Paper, and General Motors. And I'll be glad to share this with you so you can see. Now, the whole issue involved in this case stemmed around before the federal court, and this is the federal court, Southern District of Ohio, Western Division. So this is a federal court. And the judge is the one who's going to make the decision. In this particular case, in 2011, Waste Management tried to say initially, we have nothing to do with this. Court said, yes, you do, because you bought this place. You are the owners, okay? And Chemical Waste Management, which they were trying to say is a separate deal, is a subsidiary of Waste Management, Inc. What Waste Management argued was that they should be required to pay no more than 15% of the cost. That's 15%. In his opinion, Judge Rice wrote, this court cannot agree that it serves as a basis for concluding that it should be required to pay only 15% of the response costs incurred at this hazardous waste facility. Chemical Waste Management steps into the previous owner's shoes and operators as well as transporter of hazardous waste. So what did the court decide? Now remember, Waste Management said, we only think we should be in for 15%. Based upon the foregoing, the court directs the judgment, I'm reading right from the decision, that judgment be entered in favor of the plaintiff against the defendant Chemical Waste Management, Inc. in the sum of $3,200,000 and a declaratory judgment indicating that Chemical Waste Management is responsible for 49.5% of all reasonable and necessary response costs consistent with the NCP, which the plaintiff has incurred since February 1st, 2009, and incurs in the future to complete and to perform any remedy ordered by the U.S. EPA. Chemical Waste Management, a subsidiary of Waste Management, based on this court record, asked that they only be held responsible for 15%. The court said, no. This is Federal Judge Walter Rice. Said, no. You owe 49.5%. Now, simple mathematics involving all the other companies here, we know who owns the biggest share now of responsibility. It's got to be Waste Management. No other company can have that much. So while we may not know who is responsible for holding this up, I have my suspicions about who is, because they've got the biggest share of responsibility for cleaning this up. Does that make sense to you guys? I mean, they're on the hook for 49.5% of the cost of this. Now, what their communications manager said, and I'm sure this person is very good at their job, she said that Chemical Waste Management is a member of the group of companies that, quote, continues to actively work with the U.S. EPA to finalize the documents that will allow the companies to proceed with the U.S. EPA selected remedy. You know, my experience is that sometimes you judge people by what they do, not by what they say. And I think this is one of those cases. I think they spoke loud and clear when they had to be drug into federal court, kicking and screaming to assume their rightful share of the remedy to solve this barrel fill problem. And it's a big problem. And they would made it very clear in federal court, they only want a small fraction of this. But the judge didn't see it that way. Can we get Waste Management in here to meet with us? Is that a possibility?
Yes, commissioners, we can try to set up a meeting. Obviously, we will reach out to them, and it's up to them to decide whether they'll take that meeting. But yes, we can try to request a meeting with Waste Management.
Because if, again, they can talk to us, right? And if they want to come and say it's not us, it's Procter & Gamble, or it's not us, it's PPG, they can do that. There is nothing to prevent them from doing that. Correct?
But it would behoove us, Commissioner, to potentially reach out to some of the other responsible parties and see what they have to say as well.
I agree. But I think we start with the biggest one, the one that has almost half the problem dumped in their lap by the federal court. The other question I'm wondering, and we've got some representatives, if it isn't time that we have another community-wide meeting like we had at, Northwest High School? I'm wondering if it's time we get Clark County back together, because we're not moving it. The health district is not moving it. People for Safe Water are not moving it. This thing's going nowhere. And $51 50,000 barrels of toxic waste set up there in the ground with no barrier. Just plain old steel barrels. They aren't even special steel barrels. They're just old 55-gallon barrels full of this toxic waste with no barrier around it. So I'm wondering if it's maybe time, fellow commissioners.
Can we give them a chance to talk a little bit?
Well, yeah, but does that make sense to you guys?
Wait. We asked those people there, then we'll ask you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Fine. Okay, no problem.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because this is, I mean, waste management in that quote that the News Sun reporter brought clearly was not forthcoming. And I see no reason why they would be forthcoming in this setting.
How many decades has this been going on?
The landfill closed in, the barrel fill and the landfill, I think,
Right.
1980. So it's 42 years.
4
It
decades.
opened in 76, the barrel fill, 4 years of dumping, and here we are, 42 years later. The previous group got together starting in 1983, and they worked on it for decades, and they CF Water, and people just got tired, they died. They at that point still didn't have a remedy.
And I'm not, Dave has really worked hard to be very involved with this, but I'm going to add and lend my voice. And there just needs to be a whole nother row of generation, I think, of soldiers marching forward. There needs to be a generation that cares about this, the younger generation. And I was talking to Commissioner Estrop earlier, like, this is the most underestimated threat to our community health and that we can have right now. And it just goes like, it's kind of like nobody really knows or understands. And I think it's time to have even a louder voice about that. I agree with Dave and we really need to do all we can. One of the things that the commissioners did wasn't in this meeting was to not contract with Waste Management. It was a statement, maybe small for some in their mind, but listen, this is important. And if Waste Management, as Waste Management is involved with this, I don't care if it's their trash service or it's their name and their stockholders, they're responsible. They're damaging our water system by holding this up. And there's been people hired over the last decades to keep this going down the road. I'm speculating. I'm not saying it's true. I'm speculating that to keep this going down the road, keep pushing the ball so it becomes less important, but it is super important. This would affect our health. It will affect our economy. This is very, very important. So I appreciate you, Dave. Continue to give energy to this. Continue to meet with Safe Water. But this is super important, and we need to, and I agree, we need to have another meeting, albeit informational, but go after the next generation, the younger folks, to invite them, to tell them how important this is, and even to frankly scare that if this leaks into our aquifer, this is a huge problem. All this growth that we're experiencing right now, all these housing developments, it'll be a problem if this happens, and we need everybody to understand that.
And the same with business.
Well, 100%. Yeah.
I don't think we have to speculate about whether or not they're involved. That's
Yeah.
been clear for a long
Right.
time. I mean, I've been involved in this for 30 or 40 years
Yeah.
personally, and we knew this from a long time ago. The problem is getting them to face the music and put up the money.
Yeah.
And I think we got to quit arguing about whether they're involved or not. I think that's clear.
Yeah.
The problem is I think we have to get a court to tell them they got to pay and then follow through on that. So I think that's what we should meet about, is how do we move this? How do we get some action? And I get the impression you folks are so tired of them refusing to do anything that you're just worn out.
I would say that one of the difficult, I think a huge stumbling block right now is that US EPA Region 5 had asked Governor Kasich to put this site on the national priorities list. That gives US EPA a lot more power to bring the responsible corporations to the table. Mr. Kasich declined to do that. And so we are a Superfund alternative site, which has less authority for US EPA to demand them to step up. And so this stalling is why it was so detrimental. And we feared this would happen, and that's exactly what's happened.
So maybe we also should go back to our state government and ask them to put this higher on the list.
The governor has the authority to say he would support listing it, yes.
Okay?
Yeah, I'll just add, commissioners, that we did send a joint request between the city and the county, asking the governor to consider the MPL listing. That's what prompted the meeting with Ohio EPA. I did not receive the impression from Ohio EPA that they were necessarily supportive of that approach. My assumption is the governor is going to take his advice from Ohio EPA, but I'm uncertain of that.
Okay, so you folks wanted to say something, feel free.
Yeah, I'm Rod Kaufenberger with German Township. Since I've been a trustee, we have dealt with this issue. Myself and Mr. Metzger had been to several meetings here, and other trustees have come. I feel that we've got the most traction when we had the event at Northwest. I mean, it got to the point where they wouldn't let anybody else in the building. And I think at that time, with the folks that spoke, the things that they had to say, I feel that that's where most of our traction came from. You know, Maryland's group has done a tremendous job of trying to move this forward, as well as many others. And we don't feel like there's nothing happening as well. And you're right. It was my impression that several years ago that, you know, the shovels would be in the ground once they got that yearly primary responsible parties to step up to the plate. You know, I know COVID changed things and stuff like that, but, you know, there's still a lot of things happening behind the scenes with folks working from home. So I am very disappointed that things have not moved forward. I think this is going to have to be a team effort. So whatever we can do as German Township, you know, we want to be a part of that team and try to help you all move this forward.
Thank you.
At some
Johnny?
point, it may take us contacting some higher powered folks than are sitting in this. Nothing against the folks in this room, but we don't have the stature that a high powered attorney who knows how to speak the language could bring to bear on this issue. And I think at this point, our best path moving forward would be to continue down the Superfund alternative, but that's only if the companies are negotiating in good faith. And from what I found out from Maryland today, it doesn't sound like that's necessarily happening. Certainly not in a timely fashion. And at this point, as Commissioner Estrop already said, we already agree on the remedy. We already agree on the courts have already said who's responsible, to what degree. I'm not sure what are the details we need to be worried about before we can sign a consent decree and have this move forward. So if as this community moves forward and says we expect action sooner rather than later, we're setting forth where we believe this needs to happen. And of course, I think listing on the NPL, the National Priorities List, is a different direction to go than the alternative. And that is much more expensive for the companies because there's a penalty involved in that. You know, there's a there's, you clean it up and you pay for it on the alternative super fund. Do you really want the federal government to clean it up? Because they'll do it, but then they charge you a premium on top of that. So there's every advantage for these companies to sign on. Not sure why it's not happening. I think we gave them an extra year, literally, because of COVID and because of trying to reorganize the Responsible Environmental Solutions Alliance Group, et cetera. But we've given them another year. We gave them to the end of the year again. It's February, folks.
David, I would like to recommend, I had talked to Charles earlier today also, and as Warren, I'm one of the old guys here. I think what the commission needs to consider passing a resolution notifying the parties that are responsible that they have a date certain to come forth to sign the consent decree. They've never been demanded to do that. And this commission has the right to pass a resolution and demand them to sign the consent decree by a certain date, or we're going to move forward. That's not a threat, that's a promise. But we've never done that. Charles, what do you think about that solution?
Well, I think what we need to do is anything we can do to put pressure on these companies to say we are watching. The public is watching. The public has an expectation that our greatest natural resource over our sole source aquifer is protected from 1.5 million gallons of hazardous waste. So I think that any actions the commission takes, any actions that the community takes, any actions that People for Safe Water take, build up towards putting that pressure on the potentially responsible parties to either do this or we go in the direction of asking the governor for the NPL listing, because what other choice have you left us?
To put on your COVID hat for a second, Commissioner, if we were to have a countywide meeting similar to the Northwest, what would be your recommendation in terms of timetable? Mid, late March? What? Because I'm
Give us till
sensitive
March.
to
Give us till March.
March.
I think you're going to see a rapid decline in cases, and I think we have control measures in place, and we also have individuals who may want to be there but can't be there because of their, they may be immunocompromised, and it may just not be a good idea for them to be around that many people.
But we
Can go ahead. I mean, Charlie, could you launch a student campaign that we could get a lot of younger people at this high school? I mean, is that something the health department could do? I know you need one more thing. I don't know. I'm just saying if
I
we
would,
can
I
get
would
the
ask
students
you not to
involved.
put that on us at this point, because we're dealing with so many other issues that unfortunately have been
Okay,
pushed off
if we
because
create
of
something,
COVID.
share it. But I'm just saying, if we can get a lot of young people at this event to really explain this, and then we'll get the parents there, of course, with the young people. That's just my
Commissioner,
thought.
Commissioners, I would offer that our staff can take the lead.
Okay.
I know what Charlie's folks are going through right now with COVID-19. I'm okay to say that we could take that lead in scheduling and organizing, working obviously with our partners at People for Safe Water, the health district, our other government leaders and officials to make this happen.
I guess
So-
I should volunteer us first before I try to volunteer. So.
If we had it somewhere here in Springfield, is it possible that we could televise it as we televise these meetings?
We will look into that, yes.
Because I'm thinking at Springfield High, they have access to a community access channel. So if we were to have it like at Springfield High, now maybe other schools have that too, but I'm just thinking for those who are not able to attend for health reasons, the ability to tune in and listen, I think is very important.
And the importance of the message is it affects the entire community, not just the northwestern area, not just German Township, where you had a huge meeting already. We can have another one there, but the entire community needs to get back to this. I'd like to hear from Representative Kaler from the state and his thoughts. I know I sat in one meeting with him. He's been in many more than that about this issue.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Rue. Obviously, I've been involved with this since I took office in 2014. I may have a different perspective because I was in a lot of those meetings where we talked about whether we should put the the site on the MPL list. And I can't remember, I have to go back and look at my notes from now almost 8 years ago. There were discussions about there were pluses and minuses for putting it on the NPL. And I'm all for, if that's what we want to do now, I'm all for supporting that. I humbly must suggest that I'm a little bit shocked that there are meetings going on with the Ohio EPA and I'm not being told about it. Would love to be in on that because I think I can offer some help in doing that. We worked very well, our office did, with Director Butler in the past, and I'd like to be involved in that in the future. If there's any of those discussions going on, I think I can be helpful. My concern is probably after being in office, yes?
The meeting was held at the invitation of Ohio EPA.
Okay.
So you probably need to talk to Ohio
Okay.
EPA about that.
The one thing I'm going to say after being in office for almost 8 years now is bureaucracy is our problem. A lot of times it's not the elected officials, our commissioners, our state reps, our elected congressmen, but it's the bureaucracies that exist within government of people who don't get elected. They're just there. And my concern is I would love to hold Waste Management responsible. I hope someday before I'm dead that they are held responsible for what is up there in that barrel fill. My concern is not holding them responsible. It's getting whatever is in the ground out of the ground before it infects our water. Commissioner Rue is right. The mayor is right. Commissioner O'Neill has said it in the past. The minute that shows up in those 10 wells out on the edge of Springfield, it is not a bad thing. It is not a, oops, what are we going to do? It's game over. We are Love Canal at that point. And I don't think people realize that. So I want to hold Waste Management responsible. But I called People for Safe Water and was hoping that they would get on board with my idea of getting the federal government to clean it up, then go after Waste Management. They are not supportive of my idea. They can explain their reasons why. My concern is we are dealing with bureaucracy in federal government. It doesn't matter whether we went to the Obama administration, we went to the Trump administration, now we have a Biden administration. They are not doing anything. And if, in my opinion, we are waiting for people who don't get paid to be productive, they get paid to exist. And I think we need to take it upon ourselves to get the federal government paid to clean this up, then they can go after the responsible parties. That's my humble opinion. I'm not trying to put blame on anybody. I'm not trying to say you don't have good reasons, but it's my opinion that we need to get this cleaned up and we need to get our federal government to pay for it. If that's putting it on the MPL, then let's do it. But I would like to be a part of those conversations in the future because, like I said, I think Marilyn will tell you I had a good relationship with Director Butler. I have a good relationship with the new director of the Ohio EPA. The idea of working with a large group like we did at German Township, I'm all for that. I will tell you, though, that all we did was get the attention of the US EPA. That did not affect the responsible parties. I think they were somewhere else doing something else. They were not paying attention to it. I don't believe it's my opinion that they cared that we had 800 people at Northwestern.
But the EPA are the ones that deliver the idea for this particular clean, right?
When we went to DC, or we went to Chicago and flew to Chicago to talk with the US EPA, they admittedly said they have never seen a response like we had that day. We got their attention. The problem is, I don't think we can affect the Department of Justice, the Justice Department. That's, to me, the problem is bureaucracy. And that's why I'm concerned that if we don't do something on our own with the help of the federal government, whether it's NPL or the infrastructure bill that was just passed, and open up the ground, the day that leaks, we are in deep trouble.
And I agree with your thoughts on it and your compassion to want to have it done. I just think there's such a long rub, 4 decades of this company putting Springfield and the entire community off is why I can see it being difficult. But I agree, one drop into a well is going to be, it's over. Like you said, I agree. And if we can get it done in a different way, I would be for that without letting Waste Management off the hook. So I'm just saying that I really want our water cleaned up. I mean, I want that cleaned up. So,
and Commissioner, I'm saying everything that's been mentioned tonight has been good. I'm not downplaying any of it. I'm just saying, I think we're going to be waiting for a number of years.
They have 4 decades of being able to push it down the road.
The bureaucracy there is twice as bad at the federal level. I think we're going to be waiting a while, and I think we need to move as a community to get it done and get the federal government's help paying for it.
I would like to suggest that I think we've talked about as much as we can tonight about this, and what we need to do is to move forward on action. And I think our city manager said he's quite willing to take some of the lead in that, but I think we also want to keep citizens involved along the way too. So thank you folks for what you've done over the years about this. And let's hope we can actually get something done this time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners and city manager.
Commissioners, we have one other work session item, and that is the Clark County Active Transportation Plan. And with us tonight from the Transportation Coordinating Committee is Louis Agresta to discuss this.
Thank you for having me. This topic, while very important to me, is not going to be quite as fiery and interesting as what we just talked about. But again, as Brian mentioned, my name is Louis Agresta. I'm the bicycle and pedestrian planner for the Clark County Springfield TCC. Very excited to be before you tonight to discuss the Clark County Active Transportation Plan, the process we launched the fall of last year. And I just wanted to provide you an update. And also, before we get started, I do have a raspy voice. I am not COVID positive. I just have a 4-year-old that sneezes in my face regularly. And, fighting a cold. I was good to go this morning. But as the day has drawn on and I've talked more and more, my voice is kind of going by the wayside. So I'll get through tonight and hopefully be good to go tomorrow morning. So I would control here. All right, as I mentioned, so active transportation is a fancy way of saying bicycle and pedestrian. There's so many folks in our community that they get from A to B by walking or bicycling because they may not have a vehicle. So this was our first countywide opportunity to create a plan that, looked at our transportation system and tried to plan for infrastructure that's safe for all users, motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, regardless of their economic status, race, or abilities. This is not a City of Springfield plan. It's not a New Carlisle plan. It really does encompass all of Clark County. And this is really the first time we've kind of taken a comprehensive look at that. So I have this up here because, I love our trail system. But sometimes, admittedly, it can be a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you can get north, south, east, west completely on trail. It's extremely convenient to, get some exercise. For transportation, you can, get from downtown to, north, south, east, west pretty quickly. But it's a curse because so often when we think of, bicycling for transportation, folks think that that's where bicycles belong, is on the trails. And the truth is, like as I said earlier, the bicycles are great for, or trails are great for bicycles, but they also have a space on the road as well. A phrase I like to use is the trails are the highways, and no one just hops on I-70. You pull out of your driveway, drive on the local streets, get on Limestone, hop on I-70. I die a little bit inside when I see a family or, somebody that's going to go on a bike ride and they load their bicycle up to their truck or SUV and drive to a staging area. They should be able to bike 2 miles and feel safe doing so on city or county streets to really make it rather than just using their vehicle at all. So with this plan, trying to make Springfield and Clark counties roadway network more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. This would be a good example. This is Durr Road right there at Kingsgate. I believe this was a county engineer project, but this is an example of good bicycle infrastructure. That's a facility that you feel much safer being on your bicycle. You have the designated space. My children, the babysitter lives up in Northridge, and I often see, whether it be folks jogging in the bike lane, which is okay, but you also do see bicyclists as well. And it's good to have that space for them. This is a picture that kind of breaks my heart a little bit. So this is North Lime and Floral right there by St. Teresa's. I took this picture pulling out, my daughter goes to preschool there. And, this was probably a couple weeks ago. That just does not look very enticing to walk on. There's a couple things wrong with it. The sidewalks are very narrow. There's a pole in the middle of the sidewalk. There's a truck that, it's not his fault. He's got a small driveway, but, he's kind of blocking the sidewalk a little bit. If you are on the sidewalk and, a vehicle goes through, it's going to splash you with melted slush. And I think of the folks, again, I mentioned earlier that maybe the family has 1 car or 0 cars, and they have no choice. If they work at rallies, they need to walk to work, and they are walking on our sidewalks. And, the intent of this presentation tonight is not to cast blame on anybody. This road was built a long time ago. It was built that way a long time ago. But, the active transportation plan is to look at these facilities and try to identify ways, to make them better, or at least plan for the future where we can create a network that's safe for all users. So why is it important? I mentioned equity. Don't need to hammer that home too much, but just a lot of folks in our community that that rely on walking and biking for everything. Economic vibrancy. Our downtown has come a long way. That's been well documented. So placemaking, it's a buzzword in the profession in planning. You think about where you like to go. You think about where you like to go on a date with your significant other, where you like to hang out with your kids. Usually fast-moving traffic is not a part of that equation. It's, there's people outside. You're able to walk from storefront to storefront. And, sometimes I think we just focus on getting from A to B as quickly as possible, and sometimes slowing the cars down maybe, just slowing them down a little bit. You trade off that maybe getting from north side of town to the south side of town 3 minutes faster. If you trade that off for maybe a more vibrant place. We talked about that with the one-way to two-way street conversion. Look at Fountain Avenue. There's a big difference with that road being a two-way street. Cars go a little slower when they go through there. And, the results speak for themselves with all the businesses that have started up there. So future demand is another kind of trend that's growing in the industry. Younger people, younger than myself even, they're just not in love with their cars as much as older Americans. They're expecting to be able to walk and bike more frequently. If it's a mile away and they want to go to CVS or Kroger, they would like to have the option to walk or bike there. Not trying to blow up the transportation system and make walk and bike paths everywhere, but there are instances where you could trade off, faster car movements for a facility that is more accommodating to bicyclists and pedestrians. So right now, we're in as I mentioned, we kicked this off late summer, early fall, and really gotten a lot of help from our stakeholder team. I know with the city, the service center, Logan Cobb's been great to work with from the city manager's office. We've had other elected officials. They have city management from New Carlisle, Village of Enon. We've been working with Maureen Fagans at USS, which is really great because, aging in place, folks may lose their driver's license, but they want to stay in their home. So, being able to walk from your apartment or your home to run your errands is an important thing. So we've really enjoyed her participation in the plan so far. The Chamber, NTPRD have all been great in kind of framing our plan so far. But now we're trying to get the public's input. We have a project website right there, mksk.mysocialpoint.com/Clark County. On that link, if you go to that website, you can have access to a survey. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out. And you can comment on an interactive map. I'll show it right here. So this is an example of the interactive map. All those red bubbles there are where people have a comment. The orange light bulbs are where people have an idea. You can like something. So like they like the infrastructure that's here with the blue, Facebook like icon. But I've already gotten a lot of great responses, but we would love to have more. Our plan's only going to be as good as the feedback we get from it. And I thought it was really interesting. Kind of the bulk of the comments are in the kind of the spine of the city. So, just kind of go through here and some examples. I didn't get into all of them, but like no controlled crossings between Belmont and Burnett on East Main. Residents and businesses need additional crossing points. If we put ourselves in the pedestrian shoes and you're right there at Save-A-Lot, you're a quarter mile from Burnett and you're a quarter mile from Belmont. I certainly wouldn't walk one of those intersections across the street. And is there something we can do to make that easier from a pedestrian perspective? That's just some of the examples of the comments that we've received. So moving forward, this will be open through the end of February, the comment period. We will then, the project and consultant team, we'll try and identify some potential improvements, some recommendations that will be reviewed by the stakeholder team. We will also bring those out to the public for additional review, and then we'll take all that feedback, finalize recommendations, and have a plan delivered by the end of the year. And I want to wrap up with this, that's our farmers market. Just, people enjoying public spaces. When people are able to gather and, obviously the sun shining and being 70 degrees is also a nice perk as well. But, I just can't, I heard at a planning conference one time I was at, traffic is like water. The faster it moves, the more it erodes, and it just kind of stuck with me. Fast moving traffic really does kind of deteriorate a neighborhood. And I think we can balance vehicular traffic and make it more accessible for bicyclists and pedestrians as well without really hindering the motoring public's ability to get from A to B. So we're about halfway through the plan. And the reason I'm here today is trying to get more feedback on that public involvement part. And, just take the opportunity to thank you guys for letting me present. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
I have a question.
Mr. Agresta, can you go back to the website link for the
Yes.
survey, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I think if I guess Logan or Val would be able to answer. I think it was shared on the city's Facebook page.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, please go there and give us your input.
Else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we do have one add-on item tonight. That is appointing Tiffany Wanzo to the Community Grant Advisory Board. And before we move to the formal meeting, I think we have a proclamation as well.
Mr. Mayor, I have a proclamation. Whereas congenital heart disease is the most commonly found birth defect in the United States, affecting 1 in every 100 births. Thousands of patients and families around the nation are affected by this disease. And whereas the National Conquering CHD organization fights for all congenital heart disease patients and their families through awareness, community, knowledge, and research. And whereas Conquering CHD, Ohio's mission is to conquer congenital heart disease. They are accomplishing this through collaboration with patients, families, providers, and partner organizations to improve quality and outcomes through education, support, research, and awareness. Members have also supplied meals, support information, research grants, and Christmas presents for the children fighting this disease. Now, therefore, on the behalf of Warren Copeland, our mayor, and the president of our commission, he does hereby proclaim the week of February 7th through the 14th, 2022 as Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week in Springfield, and urge our citizens to recognize the 2 million Americans living with congenital heart defects, to remember loved ones who have lost their battle to CHD, and to honor the dedicated health professionals who work with these families. If you'd like to come, I know you're going to, Miss Brennan Patterson, you're going to accept this. If you want to meet me down here, I'll give that to you, and I know you have a few words to share with us.
Hey, wait a minute. Photographer's coming.
evening. My name is Brennan Patterson. I am 18 years old and I am currently a senior at Northeastern High School. I'm speaking in front of you tonight because congenital heart disease, or CHD, is in desperate need of awareness. Congenital heart disease affects 1 in 100 births. Out of this 1%, 25% need life-saving open heart surgery. CHD has over 40 different variations and professionals only know the cause of about 15%. CHD takes twice as many infants' lives as all pediatric cancers combined, yet these cancers have 5 times the funding. This is simply to show the severity of the disease and bring light on just how underfunded the cause is. CHD has actually affected me on a personal level. My cousin Cash was born on September 19th, 2019, and within 24 hours of being home, he was on his way back to the hospital turning blue. Once at the hospital, my family was told to say our goodbyes as his future was uncertain. My aunt and uncle were told that they had the sickest child in the whole hospital. We were then informed that he had congenital heart disease and that he needed open heart surgery to save his life. My family and I had never heard of congenital heart disease, so the news terrified me in an unimaginable way. Cash will now live with CHD for the rest of his life as there is no cure. Almost losing someone I loved to this disease sparked a fire in me to make a difference. I made a vow to Cash that I was going to do whatever I could to help children like him. Through school, I've collected over $350, and I'm currently planning to host an alumni versus staff volleyball game in the spring. My family has also hosted a 5K the past 2 years with a 2021 race, raising over $30,000. Today, Cash is a very active and energetic 2-year-old who loves choo-choos and race cars. He's truly the strongest little boy I know, and I couldn't be more proud of him. My proclamation tonight declares February 7th through the 14th as Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week. Signing this proclamation shows people like Cash that the city of Springfield cares. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Okay, I think we have a public hearing.
Yes.
Public hearing will be held to consider the vacation of the first alley south of East High Street from South Limestone west to Primrose Alley. Has legal notice been given of this hearing?
Notice was published in the Springfield News and Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city, advertising the city commission's consideration of vacating the first alley south of East High Street from South Limestone Street west to Primrose Alley. Attached hereto are true and correct copies of the notices of public hearing published on January 3rd and 10th, 2022.
I move that the communication be ordered, received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Is there anyone here who wants to speak to this matter?
So we'll have the staff report in a second. What day he's pulling that up now?
Evening, everyone. The owner or applicant wants the vacated alley space for having a parking lot. Return reports from utilities state no objection, with Ohio Edison requiring access to maintain these facilities. They have facilities in this alleyway. Return reports from city staff state no objections. Staff recommends approval of the request to vacate the alley. Staff received no objections and there were no objections at planning board meeting. The request was approved unanimously. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
So this isn't being used really as an alley, as an alleyway, right?
No.
And when I looked at it, it looks like they're just trying to clean up the map to make this usable for the space.
Yes.
Parking space, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I understand you that there were no objections
No, there were no
before the
objections.
planning committee or thereafter?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone here want to speak to this?
Well, my name is Aaron Horn. I represent the applicant on this alley vacation submission. Really, it does two things for us here, just to provide you an update from the development perspective. Vacating the alley, it's really acted as a private alley for over a decade now. As you can see, it's kind of curved off and there's really no access. So functionally, it's acted as really a private alley for many, many years. And secondly, on the back side of this project, there'll be a parking structure, kind of a parking ramp, which allows us to house the cars of future residents. So we're using some of that alleyway as a potential way to maximize our parking site. I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission?
Are you going to provide, ask for a curb cut back onto that street to access that? If you're going to use it as a drive to enter into a parking garage or whatever?
Right. So we would would function as really the ramp currently as designed would ramp up. So you'd be ramping up. So on the west side, where Primrose Alley currently is on the west, that would be going down towards the base. On the limestone entrance, it would be going up. So it's not really a structure, it's more of just a ramp. But yes, we would facilitate the curbs. We wouldn't really be modifying much in way of the existing curbs that are currently there. Because there's really an entrance that already exists there that would satisfy our need to access that ramp.
Any other questions from commission? Anyone else in the audience want to speak to this? Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillip?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. The city commission meeting is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillip?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for the opportunity to make decisions for the people of Springfield. Help us to make them well and to serve our constituents fully. In your name we pray. Amen.
Flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
A move.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillip?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Clerk will proceed with first readings by title only.
Vacating the first alley south of East High Street from South Limestone Street west to Primrose Alley. Vacating the second alley west of Tibbetts Avenue from East Liberty Street north to the first intersecting east-west alley. Vacating the first alley west of Erie Avenue from Auburn Avenue north to the first intersecting east-west alley. Providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum aggregate principal amount of $7,025,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the municipal water system facilities, including replacing water lines and improving the water treatment plant by installing a substation air brake and constructing a liquid ferric building together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. And B, municipal sewer system facilities, including but not limited to constructing and installing sanitary and storm sewer lines, rehabilitating the city's wastewater treatment plant by replacing a primary effluent pump and substation, post-aeration gates and sludge pumps, installing combined sewer overflow mitigation and inflow infiltration elimination project, and purchasing real estate and related interests therein, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. Authorizing the purchase of 7 2022 Ford Police Interceptors from National Auto Fleet Group for an amount not to exceed $286,455.54 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a preliminary agreement with Marker Incorporated for the preliminary services, design development services for the design, build, construction of the National Advanced Air Mobility Center of Excellence to be located at the Springfield-Beckley Municipal Airport for an amount not to exceed $171,800. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a grant contract with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation to accept funds in the amount of $25,580 from the Ohio Elderly and Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Program, and authorizing the city manager and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents considered necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said contract, to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements, and to provide assurances and additional information as required by the Ohio Department of Transportation. Authorizing the city manager to apply for and accept a 2022 Energized Community Grant through the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC, an amount up to $61,782 to be used for implementation of energy savings or energy infrastructure measures, authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement for the acceptance of said grant, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance to do all things necessary for the submission of the application and acceptance of the grant and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew the parking management agreement with Reef Parking, formerly known as Republic Parking System, LLC, for downtown parking management services for an amount not to exceed $112,568. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Gillum Lawn Care and Landscaping, LLC, for the mowing of boulevards for a period of 3 years with an option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods for an amount not to exceed $163,814. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Dayton Sweeping Service, doing business as DSS Sweeping Service, for street sweeping cleaning services for a period of 3 years with an option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods for an amount not to exceed $638,675.
I was impressed when Jill can read all that stuff. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Anyone in the audience?
I just would be curious, the amount of $61,782 that we're getting from NOPEC. At this point, what are your thoughts about how we might use that?
Yes, commissioners. Right now, we're targeting a revitalization renovation of the former Downs Army Reserve Center out on High Street for use by our police division. There are several energy-related components of that building that need updated or upgraded. And so right now, we're looking at utilizing those dollars to help with that renovation.
Great. And that's one of the benefits of belonging to NOPEC is we receive these kind of opportunities.
Yes, that is correct. We've received these dollars every year. We've been a part of NOPEC, and we've been able to utilize these dollars for energy-efficient upgrades throughout city facilities.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will proceed.
Confirming and approving a contract with Highbridge Consulting, LLC, for professional consulting services for an amount not to exceed $24,000 for the period of January 1, 2022 to December 31, 2022.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 9190, passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the Codified Ordinances of the City of Springfield, Ohio, by repealing and replacing Section 147.13 titled Claims.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement to release the EDA federal interest in a revolving loan fund award with the United States Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, EDA, to release the federal interest in the revolving loan fund award number 06390211.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 2214 to revise the transfer of monies authorized and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
What are we revising?
What?
I asked him, what are we revising?
We're revising the original transfer of monies ordinance that was part of the budget. And what we're adding this time around is an additional amount of money so we can address the FBO needs out of the airport. We're going to be taking that over,
Okay.
but we'll need to be able to fund those.
Alrighty.
Anything else from the commission? Anyone in the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefor, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Yeah. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Rue,
Yes.
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a state and municipal lease purchase agreement with Clayton Holdings LLC and related escrow agreement by and among Clayton Holdings LLC, UMB Bank NA, and the city of Springfield, Ohio, in the principal amount of $548,502 to finance the purchase of one Sutphen custom pumper truck, authorizing the city manager, finance director, city treasurer, and law director to do all things they deem necessary to enter into and complete the subject lease transaction and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
And what's the amount of time that we'll see this truck in our one of our firehouses?
What we're being told is about a 23-month build time.
And I also have a question. So I've received this question from a community member wondering if an international truck was considered for that. I know that we had that discussion in the past, but I'm not positive if that was actually specifically an international truck considered.
Yeah, and I'll have Chief Miller if he wants to discuss the type of truck that's purchased here.
I don't believe International's in the process of building fire trucks any longer. We had an open competitive bid process based on specs, and Sutphen, who's also a local vendor, was the business that was selected.
Thank you.
But the thing to note is that we do buy our ambulances from Navistar or from GM and the Navistar plan.
That's
Correct.
the next item.
I know. I'm just saying that is part of it, though.
Yeah, the next item, actually, we
you.
do purchase the GM chassis that are made here
Perfect.
at the international plant for our
Ambulance.
EMS units.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of two Fraser Type 3 14-foot ambulances from Fraser Limited for an amount not to exceed $360,221.68 through the HVAC Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Chief, if you would comment on the feedback we've been getting on the new ambulances from both the personnel perspective as well as the patient.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak to this. This has probably been one of the most successful things we've done in the fire department. Strategic planning, I would place number one, and the purchase of these ambulances, I would say, is number two as far as the impact. Our citizens let us know that the Internationals, while a great local product, they were awfully heavy and they rode very rough down the road. We invested in the partnership of the GM van cutaway chassis, and we have received nothing but positive feedback from both our citizens and our fire and EMS personnel. Everybody is super happy with this purchase. We saved drastic amounts of money on the purchase as well as the maintenance of these vehicles over the years.
And the GM chassis are made here in Springfield by Navis.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll
Great.
add, Commissioners, another piece to the medic unit upgrades is we actually switched our cot system as well to a striker cot, which one helps our employees and reduces the amount of lifting, but makes it a lot smoother for the patient as well.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 21-351, granting a franchise to First Transit Incorporated by the addition and amendment of various sections as set forth below and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving a joint law enforcement operations task force obligation document to obtain funding of up to $19,372 for task force officer overtime reimbursement for the period of October 12, 2021 through September 30, 2022, pursuant to the memorandum of understanding between the city and the United States Marshals Service, authorizing the city manager and chief of police to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, federal requirements and declaring an emergency.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience?
Yeah, so these, both items that are on here tonight are agreements that we have with the federal government, one through the United States Marshal Service, the other one through the Drug Enforcement Agency specifically. And so this provides opportunity for us to recapture our joint operations. They will provide funding for overtime that's associated with our work with these two different agencies.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager and the chief of police to enter into a federal equitable sharing agreement and certification with the United States government, Department of Justice, and Department of Treasury for the period of January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2022, confirming and approving all transactions from January 1, 2022 to passage of the ordinance and declaring it an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience?
Yeah, so again, very similar as this is a partnership with the federal government and some of the joint activities that we take place with, specifically here with the Drug Enforcement Agency. And so this provides us an opportunity to capture some of the assets, money that's seized through these operations, but also help in working with us in partnership with our detectives units, our investigations unit, working with the DEA.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 1 to the contract between the city and A&B Asphalt Corporation for the 2021 Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program to decrease the contract in an amount not to exceed $88,407.40 for a total amount not to exceed $855,034.26, and to extend the contract completion date to December 17, 2021, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 1 and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I can't let this pass. This is a decrease in a change order. Tell me what happened that resulted in a decrease?
The decrease in this is primarily due to the fact that when we bid the sidewalk curb and gutter program, we estimate it based on historical activity in the program. This year, more folks in our community opted to make the repairs themselves rather than have the city make the repairs. So that results in a decrease in this.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Having made that explanation, don't think that the city's forgotten. The bills go out February 4th. Just thought we'd let you know.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Levying special assessments for the improvement of streets by the construction of sidewalk curbs and gutters in the 2021 Sidewalk Curb and Gutter Program and declaring it an emergency therein.
So
Moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Rue?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a development incentive agreement, non-residential development, with Goff Properties LLC to provide for water and sewer services to real property outside the city limit and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Just be curious where this property is located.
Yeah, I'll ask Chris Moore, our service director, to answer that.
This property is on 72 south of town, right at the Springfield Township, Green Township line. So before you get to the airport, it would be the old Truett Roofing and Siding building on the west side of the road.
Thank you.
Else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
In support of the Dayton Region Economic Development Strategy, the designation of the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission as lead agency for the Economic Development District, and endorsing the request for Economic Development District designation from the EDA, and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Phillips?
Yes.
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 Finding the necessity and declaring the intent to appropriate interest in real property in connection with providing right-of-way and easements needed for the purpose of making and repairing roads, which shall be open to the public without charge, to wit, the pavement reconstruction and resurfacing, curb and walk replacement, drainage improvements, and/or water and sewer infrastructure improvements on Yellow Spring Street between Pleasant Street and West Main Street, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. I believe that consent.
Actually, I
add-on.
had
One
one
add-on.
add-on.
Okay.
Add-on is appointing Tiffany Wanzo to the Community Grant Advisory Board and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Now we're through.
We are?
Anyone in any commission want to speak about anything?
I did see Chris Moore on Facebook today, telling us all about how he was going to prepare for the forecasted snowstorm. Do you want to repeat what you said so that people are tuning in can get a sense of what we're doing to prepare for this storm?
I don't know if I can repeat what I said. There was some really good editing. We need to give credit to whoever edited that video. I said a lot of mumbling to get to where that was. Where we stand right now, we have all of our trucks ready. We have an ample supply of salt in the barn. We have the first shift of drivers was asked to stay home and sleep in tomorrow morning, and we will let them know by 10 o'clock tomorrow what time they should come in to start the rotation. So we should be starting off with good equipment, fresh drivers, and plenty of salt. Everybody needs to be very respectful of the drivers. When we get ice, as opposed to snow, I've seen those big trucks just start sliding. So give them space. If you don't have to go out, don't go out. We'll be out there working around the clock. So you can rest easy, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Anything else from commission?
Commissioners, I did want to just add, as you know, we've had no better way to describe it, a long drawn out battle with Spectrum to get Channel 5 back in place. It has actually been out since really before August of 2020, when we had to update and upgrade our equipment from analog to digital. We did our part, and then it took until now. I'm glad to say tonight we have the commission meeting live on Channel 5 back to the viewing public. So I am glad that we're back. I am frustrated that it took so long. But again, Channel 5 is live and available for those on Spectrum. We are also researching to see if there's a way for us to be on ATT Uverse as well, so that we can, again, just provide as many platforms for individuals in our community to get information.
So if there are folks
Great.
out there who've been watching the meeting, congratulations. We're glad to have you. You want to say anything else?
Is it on? Otis Williams, 1627 Yorkshire Court. I just want to say it's a new year. There's a lot of things we have to look forward to. You know how I feel about the South Side. There's money available. I think Brian understands where some of that money could be used with the housing conflict and fixing up some of our neighborhood parks on the South Side and try to help get this distressed label off of that part of town. We need to move forward, and a lot of focus need to be placed on the South Side. I know you get tired of hearing the South Side. They're all different parts of town, but right now the South Side needs a whole lot of help, and I think the attention needs to be applied. Thank you.
As a person who lives on the South Side, I have to agree with you, and I can assure you that Shannon Meadows is focusing on exactly what you're talking about. Anybody else?
Otis, I don't get tired of hearing about the South Side. I like that there's a lot of attention happening, so don't make that assumption. I think we need to hear about the South Side more and continue to.
You know, I just want, like I've always said, I want Springfield to be
Yeah, we do too.
divided. Family.
Yep.
Out.
Yep.
This is work ever.
Name address for the record.
My name is Wes Baby, and I live at 1854 Appian Way. And I want to thank the commission for bringing to further our awareness the situation with regard to the water that we are dealing with. Rarely do we, when we talk about having an existential threat, but we have one. I'm one who is familiar with what happened in Flint, Michigan, with regard to the water crisis that occurred there. And that is small potatoes compared to what we are dealing with here. And I'm wondering about, and I don't know all about this, but with that aquifer and how many, not just for Springfield, but how many other communities will be affected if this happens. It is seriously to be considered. And it may be that bringing others into this conversation would be important, especially those who are, vulnerable to this, who may not know it. So I just want to thank you for bringing this up. I realize we have a lot of things on our plate with COVID and all that goes on with it. But this is very, very important, and it's something that I have been concerned about for many, many years with regard to water. And not just here, but around the world. But here we are with this absolutely wonderful resource that is really our future. It's the future for this whole region, is the fact that we have this great supply of good water. And if we get that compromised, and I can't believe that we already have it, we're fortunate that since 1980, this has been going on and we have not yet had a catastrophe. We're very, very fortunate. We're just on, time is running out. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and whatever we can do to deal with this problem, we need to do it, and do it as soon as humanly possible.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Their motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes, the meeting is adjourned.
Song.